Well, Dr. Roger Turner is joining us now, and he's got some information on the Mutual Report. Now, it was amazing. I was watching this meeting on Tuesday, and I guess this goes way back. This is since 1984. That if someone wants to lease out their house or lease out their home, there's rules that they're limited to 6 months, and so people can't just lease it out and move out or buy it just for the leasing purposes, I guess, is what this whole meeting was about. And if actually now you're changing that policy and making it okay to lease out.
Well, it's not finished yet, Johnny, but thanks, by the way, for having me. It has been an interesting time. Before 1984, by the way, I think as we discussed before, there was no leasing. It was not allowed. So 1984 was a significant change, and it enabled every resident, every member, to lease their unit for 6 months out of a 12-month period in the year. And it's really been working very well. I think it's served the community well. I think it's served the people well. The thing is that now, obviously, there is a group, that wanted a longer lease period. They didn't just want it, Johnny. Their methodology has been to demand it. And so it's been difficult.
Well, that's the thing. I guess it seems impractical for someone to lease out their home for 6 months and move out for 6 months. It's just it seems like that's a tough thing to try to do. To try to just who wants to just come in and lease for 6 months?
Well, there are many. There are many here that come from the cold country, and lease in the winter. There are many that come from the hot country in the summer because it's cooler here than where they are. So, it's really not a problem.
So it has worked out, do you think, the 6 month
It has
leasing?
worked out.
And but is it a problem sometimes? What if you can't find someone that wants just that 6 month period and they're like stuck, or they want to leave it and they can't afford to have it?
Well, Johnny, I think it's important that you understand that this community was not created, to be an investment community. It was created to be a homeowners community. It's a little different because it's a senior community. It's not just your typical bedroom community where people, 90% or more, they work all the time and they're only there at night and on the weekend, which is why they call it a bedroom community. Here, it's just about the opposite. Most of these people are here all the time. The thing is that these people also travel themselves. And a lot of them maybe even have a second place somewhere else. So, for example, people in Phoenix, they live in Phoenix in the winter and they lease their unit here for the time they're in Phoenix, and then they come and spend the rest of the time here in the summer. So there are lots of situations in which people use this opportunity. I think that there are some things that I would like to say. There was a write-up, obviously, in the Globe following the meeting. There's a couple things that I would address. The first one I would address is something that was incorrect, and that is that they noted that the consul at the meeting was the PCM corporate consul. That is incorrect. The consul is United Mutual's corporate consul, and that correction was noted immediately to the Globe, and it has been retracted on their website. But many people read this and they don't necessarily follow that, but it has been retracted, and I expect that it will be corrected in next week's Globe. There's another thing that was in there, that a statement by one of the directors, Director Duran, who was the one who introduced the motion, that the people in the community are suffering. Johnny, I don't think that. I think it's an unfortunate choice of words, and I'm not sure exactly what was meant by it, but the reality is that if people are suffering, certainly the board is going to be well aware of that. I think that you know, this community has one of the lowest delinquency rates of any association. So if the delinquency rate were high, that would be an indication, you know, that there's something wrong. There's another thing, you know, those that are involved in this community know that there are many avenues of help that are offered in this community. For example, all of the boards support the social services organization that is run by PCM. These people do many things. They do all of these things. Mostly are done confidentially, but they're all done to help people that get in some difficult situation one way or another. There's another thing, you know, financially, there are financial thresholds that are in place and have been in place for a long time. And they're in place to try and protect people from coming into this place if they really don't have the finances to support their assessments, which are part of living here. So we in the board try and make those thresholds practical. We try and make them realistic, really for the protection of the mutual and for the protection of the people that would like to live here.
I guess that's one of the dangers is if someone does just buy the place and lease it out because they don't intend to live there, and that's when they get all these benefits, whoever it is that moves in, but it just it can just be teenagers that want to hang out and there's no.
Well, Johnny, there's a couple points here. First of all, anyone who leases needs to have the same age requirement as those who live here. You know, it's 55. The reality is that, you know, these things, the more you open them up, the more difficult they are to control. One of the more difficult things that the board deals with all the time are people that violate their occupancy agreement. And, you know, we try and, most of these things are done in the closed sessions, so all of the community is not aware unless it's your neighbor. If it's your neighbor, you're probably very aware of the violations that are going on. But they are difficult and they are expensive. They require staff time, they require security, they require legal, and all of these expenses, of course, are all passed to every member of the community. So if you are going to have people that are maybe not quite as vetted, which is typically leasing is typically done between the member of the unit and the person who wants to lease. There is a permit involved that has been established, so there is some control, but mostly the board does not get involved between the owner and the person who is leasing. So consequently, you know, if you're going to invoke more controls, criminal controls, financial controls, the age controls, all of these things, it all takes more staff time, more legal time, more security time. And as those things increase, all of those costs are passed to all of the members. So I can easily recall last year the board increased the price of the rental permit from around $100 and something to $300. And there was an outcry by those who wanted the 12-month leasing opportunity. Well, the outcry, the reality of it was that it was only increased because there was an effort to try and distribute the costs of leasing more appropriately to those who leased, rather than spread them among all the others who don't lease. There's another reality here, is that in United there are only currently 3% of the residents that are leasing their units. Now you can say a couple things. I mean, and what that means that 97% are going to be paying, you know, any increase costs that may be associated, whatever they might be, with a change in the leasing policy. I think there's another important thing that, you know, if it were currently 90%, for example, of those that were leasing in our United community, then you would say, wow, you know, there's really a demand, you know, for this kind of action to be taken place. But when there's only 3%, I think you have a little difficulty at convincing the majority that there's a tsunami of demand, you know, for change. So there's a lot of these things that are difficult to convey, difficult to understand until you get involved. There's another thing I need to say, and that is, you know, being on the board is very much of a learning experience, educational experience, if you will. While most of us that have served on the board have been involved one way or another in the community, being on the board is different. You know, there's a lot of things to learn. You're involved in all these committees and all the actions and the budgets, and there are a lot of things to learn. Collectively, the 6 people, you know, that have supported the change in the leasing, collectively they have a term of 2.5 years of board service. Well, I can tell you that's not a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't know their way around. That's not to suggest that. It's just rather that it's something important. I think for a decision where there are irreversible consequences and where it impacts everyone in the community, I think it is a very important consideration. I'll say another thing. You know, at the meeting, the first motion that was introduced was really quite a straightforward motion to send to the community members for a vote on whether they wanted to change leasing from 6 months to 12 months. This was rejected, you know, and that's why we went to the second motion. The second motion essentially really wiped out all controls. That will be there will probably be more discussion, I expect, you know, about that, what the impact is, et cetera. In fact, you know, there's been a lot of criticism about the council for not advising previously about the impact of the second motion, the impact being that it takes us back to 0, you know, with no leasing. But the reality is that even though that motion was addressed at our agenda meeting, it was subsequently restated with the direction that staff enter it exactly as it was restated, with no consultation of staff or United's counsel. So it really wasn't addressed prior to the time that it was introduced at the meeting. So there are a lot of things to know and consider.
Well, is there another city in the United States that does something like Laguna Woods, that has those kind of rules and is set up?
Johnny, there are not a lot of co-op operations. And in fact, I think they're probably not growing, they're probably diminishing. I don't have specific figures, but I think that you can't really go by what somebody else is doing. There's a couple things about this one here. You know, this community is a beautiful location, and over the years, this community has developed and built up many amenities. So for somebody coming in here, you know, on a rental basis, it's really, really quite an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody that wants to get involved in this for financial gain, you know, they've got a place where there's a climate and amenities that are pretty attractive.
Well, do you feel like this is resolved, or if it does continue, what will the cost be if you do have to continue fighting this?
Well, Jenny, I think it's difficult to forecast the cost. You know, yes, we know that Third Mutual, for example, has had a 12-month leasing policy in place for a long time. In fact, in Third, you know, there's almost 30% of the units that are leased. So the resolution, you know, it could come rapidly, really depending upon the votes, or it could be drawn out further. I would hope that there would be further discussion about it and recognition of some of these important impacts. I would also really hope that there might still be support for sending it to the full community, you know, for a vote. It's really on something like this that is so important to them. I think that the full membership should have the opportunity to express their position.
Well, thank you, Roger. Our guest is Roger Turner. And, you know, if you do want to see this meeting that it took place on Tuesday, we're going to be replaying that meeting. That will be on the 16th, starting at 6 o'clock at night. And the length of that meeting is 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it is something that people need to see, because I think you get to see both sides of the issue.
Can I mention a couple other things?
Okay.
Quickly. There is an opportunity for those that would like to write an opinion about this, and that address is P.O. Box 2220, Laguna Woods, 92654.
Okay, so people can send in.
Yeah, because of the complexity of laws and so forth involved, that is what is required. But anyway, that is an opportunity for them to express.
I agree.
Thank you.
And that is something to see. So make sure to watch that replay. Well, coming up after the break, we're going to have Tony Barr here. He's going to give us an entertainment report about all the stuff going on right here in Laguna Woods. So stay tuned for more Channel 6 News.